Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Martin and I am a 20-year veteran educator who is currently working in Amman, Jordan. I have worked overseas in Malaysia, in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, but also in California. I'm a California native. And it is through my work in Online Model United Nations that, based here in Amman, that I have come to be speaking to you today about connecting learning and global education and the importance that I see that plays for all of us as educators. In my role here at ACS Amman, the American Community School of Amman, Jordan, I'm currently teaching a middle school Model United Nations course. And in that course, I have integrated a project that I developed 3 years ago, an online collaborative project connecting students around the world around Model United Nations. And before I tell you how that works and the technology involved and how this is a student-driven project and initiative, I guess what I should mention is the importance that I place on global education and connected learning. Maybe before these were fashionable words, this is something that I felt very strongly about. As a social studies teacher, I felt that, you know, the best way for students to become truly engaged in international relations, for example, was to do something like a Model United Nations simulation. As time has gone on, it's not just the content and the delivery of the material through MUN that I have found to be important, but actually the leadership roles that emerge when students are actively engaged in, I guess, what you could call experiential learning. Model UN roughly fits into that kind of framework. And so through Model UN, you have two things happening. You have experiential learning, you have a little bit of, the role playing. You have a lot of skills like public speaking, collaboration, active, deep listening, empathetic listening, that sometimes are hard to teach in traditional classroom environments. And then, of course, you have the harder subjects around which Model United Nations often looks at, issues of water scarcity, disarmament, human rights, and those kinds of things. I find that the value of connected learning is that many of the skills that we say we need students to know for the 21st century, for the kinds of jobs that are on the horizon and for the jobs that are on the horizon that we don't know about, require a certain skill set that is not easily taught in classrooms. And the beauty of technology and the internet is that we're able to really blow that up and allow for a level of connectedness, thereby exposing students and having them practice certain skills, again, that are hard to do in a classroom. So I feel that the whole nature of global education is important because I think realistically many of the jobs our students are looking at are going to be collaborative in nature. Their students are going to be working in teams with individuals from other parts of the world. You're going to be working across time zones. You're going to need to find a way to have a positive online presence because the people you work with may never be ones that sit in the same office as you do. And I think that students kind of intuitively get this because they're digital natives and this is the environment that they live in. However, to do something that is academic in nature, that is online, that is fun, that's engaging, that brings out this skill set, I think is still relatively unique and relatively rare. I know I tell my own children that it's one thing to learn content, but I'm actually more concerned, both for my own children and for all my students that I work with around the world, that I'm actually more concerned about their ability to be innovative thinkers and to work with others to come up with solutions or new ideas and then to execute them using the tools at their disposal to create something new. And so my work with Online Model United Nations has brought all of those together. It's brought together primarily free technology. It has brought together that element of connectedness and collaboration. Students have a goal that they want to accomplish, and then by giving them the tools and then kind of standing back and getting out of the way, it's allowing them to create something that's new and innovative and unique, and something that's never been done before. My experience in developing this online program is actually a little bit interesting, and it's a bit telling on education at the moment. After being a traditional educator, as I mentioned, in the UAE and in Malaysia and in California, I did a one-year stint as an online teacher. And all teachers have to do extracurricular activities, and so my online extracurricular club was to attempt to do a Model United Nations club. When I decided to reach out beyond my school to get some assistance from students as a model to my new club members, the project went a little bit viral. And I've written a couple of times how that night, when I invited some students into my classroom to test out how we could do a Model UN debate in an online environment, it went viral. And I kept trying to close my room, and more students would join, and I would try and close my room. And then as the world turned and through various time zones, more and more students began to join. And that was a turning point for me professionally, because I realized that there was a whole new platform and a whole new avenue to take a very traditional and much loved academic program, Model United Nations, and transfer that fully into an online environment. When my administration found out that it was popular, they immediately pulled the plug on my program. They put a minder on me and called in the attorneys so they could try and figure out how they could patent and monetize an online Model United Nations program. And at that point, I knew that there were going to be some problems, because having done Model United Nations for many years in Malaysia and the Middle East, I knew that the strength of Model UN was in connecting kids. And under a model called the Hague International Model United Nations, which is an MUN format popular outside the United States, those programs are driven by students. So it's not university students helicoptering in to provide a service for high school students. It's high school students providing a conference or a debate experience for other high school students. So there's a tremendous leadership component in this as well. And I knew at that moment, when the minders were called in, that I was not going to be able to develop this in a for-profit online school, that I was going to have to go elsewhere and do it independently. And hence I left that school and founded a year later, when my non-compete clause expired, the online Model United Nations program. And so it's been driven by students from around the world. We have approximately 60 students globally that are involved in training one another how to use and integrate the technologies, tools that we use for debates. They set the schedules, they recruit other students, they have input onto the leadership positions, they actually run the debates and training sessions. And over the course of 3 years, they have come up with new ideas beyond the traditional one debate a month for students around the world. They have innovated the first online International Court of Justice simulation, ICJ. We are in the early stages of an all-French Model United Nations program. The idea there is taking the schools that are doing this now and to expand that into Francophone countries in West Africa. We are piloting an Arabic MUN program the end of March. And again, all this is being done by students. They're translating the documents, they're networking with one another to provide this experience. And we've gone from one regional debate to debates in Asia, the Pacific. We even have delegates from East Timor, for example, the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. So what started initially, again, was one idea to bring kids together to provide this kind of traditional MUN experience in a non-traditional environment, has been taken by students and has really created what I now call a global movement. And the movement really is embodied by our vision statement, which says that Model United Nations should be made accessible to as many people as possible. It's an inherently strong and transformative program for many students. And a student's inability to travel and come to an expensive Model UN conference should not be the barrier for participation. And I think this is something else that gets to connected learning, that connected learning is about connecting learners. And if you can take away some of the artificial constructs that make that difficult, I think you can really begin to unleash some very powerful synergies that are happening both globally and that kids are interested in. I'll make one final comment that I think is really telling. We became officially a not-for-profit organization several months ago, and the president of our board happens to be a former student of mine and former MUN delegate. And he came to Doha. I was at a conference there and met some of my students. And as we were talking, he made a really telling comment. He said, you know, when I first became involved with this program and was watching it develop, I really thought it was about technology. And he said, this is not a technology story. He said, this is fundamentally an education story and something about a story about people and students. And I said, I totally agree with that. And he said, as a businessman, I'm going to tell you what else I see, which I think is a challenge for us as educators. He said, this program is not Model United Nations online. He said, what this has developed into, because it's student-driven, is this has turned into a social network through which Model United Nations is being developed. And there's a very big difference to that. Digital natives and the generation of high school students that we're working with are kind of the first generation to take their work environment, their learning environment, their socializing environment, and it's all meshed together. And I think all of us, educators, businesses, are really struggling to figure out how you meet people in that space, how to be authentic in that space, and how to do the things people want to do in that space. In this case, the social network that's been developed has been driven by students around the idea of Model United Nations. I think had I attempted to do it the other way, to create this big happy family and then say, okay guys, now we're going to learn Model UN, I don't think it would have been as successful. And I think as we develop educational programs that connect learners, we have to really be mindful of the fact that this generation senses inauthentic community a mile away. And the more that we can do to empower students to build their own learning experiences, I think it's going to be far more powerful and successful than for teachers to design them, maybe even charge students, invite them in, and let them have this experience. Those are still valuable, but I don't think they're as powerful as letting the students really drive and connect and innovate the solutions themselves. In addition to the high school program, which is the core of the program, we also have a middle school program, which is being kind of run primarily out of Edmodo. So we have a safe social network for those students to participate in. There's a heavy emphasis on mentoring, with high school students mentoring middle school students. And we also have a small university program in addition that's run by a half dozen college-age students around the world. The Hague International Model United Nations is the largest MUN organization in the world, one of the most prestigious. And last year, April 23rd to be exact, they agreed to partner with us, or to allow us to partner with them, maybe I should say, to provide for the first time an online option under the Simon Foundation network. So the Simon Foundation has a conference in The Hague, one in Singapore, and one in Doha. And by allowing us to partner with them, they in effect have gained an online branch to their prestigious Model United Nations program. So that was a big honor for us and allowed us to tap into a network of potentially 55,000, 60,000 students.